Good afternoon, all. Hopefully you can hear me and see my screen. We're just waiting another minute or so to see if we get anybody else joining, and then we'll get off. We'll get underway. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us in what we hope is the first in a series where we're going to talk about 4D planning. So we're going to tell a little bit about what 4D planning is, first of all, why we've adopted it at Proicere, and the benefits that it could bring your projects. So first of all, introductions. My name is Dan Ashton. I'm the technical manager at Proicere, and it's my job to implement the tools, workflows, and the key documentation throughout Proicere. I have a background in civil engineering, so I'm not an out-and-out planner by trade. I also have worked for a long period as a BIM coordinator and later as a BIM manager. In my previous life, I've assisted design reviews, constructability reviews. We did installation workshops. And as part of my BIM manager role, I implemented huge new tool sets to big clients such as BAE, Magnox, and Sellafield Limited. I work for Proicere now, which we help our clients mitigate risks, basically, and exploit their opportunities. And we do this by combining what is a traditional project controls setting with some innovative tools. Our aim is to basically make project controls as simple as it can be and as visual as it can be, with the idea being that this will help the project produce a true digital twin, first of all, of its model, and also to assist in the construction side of things, to make sure that everybody on site is on the same page when we eventually get there. At Proicere, we're currently engaging with some of the UK's biggest contractors. We have some of the UK's most expensive projects in our portfolio. Our biggest currently being a 1.5 billion processing facility, which is a government facility. And we're assisting clients such as Morgan Sindall, KBR, and Sellafield Limited. Our job is basically to work here to improve project controls and integrate it with the BIM model so that we create a true digital twin. So a little bit of an introduction then for those who aren't aware maybe of what 4D is. 4D is part of the BIM Level 2 process. BIM Level 2 process was mandated by the government in 2011. Every government funded project had to be BIM Level 2. There was a deadline set for this, and as part of those BIM levels, one of them was 4D. So 4D in essence is essentially the time element, and it gives your model the ability to add the construction or manufacturing plan to what is already, or what already should be, a well-defined and full of information BIM model. From that time edition, Proicere then take that model and we create construction lifecycle simulations. We can map on logistics, site models, and the idea being that we end up with a fully virtual construction or fabrication version of the finished building or product or whatever it may be. The production of a 4D model can help also with your 5D outputs. So when we're talking about things like quantities, we're able to calculate from the 4D model, as examples, things like concrete pours, tonnage of steel work, meters of MEP services. With a fully cost-loaded 4D model, we're able to calculate earned value, resource usage, and things like plant and equipment utilization to make the site more efficient and the manufacturing process more efficient. It all starts with a model. So we have to start with a model, and that's pretty much all we need, a design model. Largely, we receive these we can take them in many formats, but normally they come from DWF files or DWFX files. It's a fairly universal format that you can output from any 3D tool. And we then import those into our tool of choice, which is Synchro Pro. From that, we then add the P6 data or the Microsoft project data, and we basically bring the two together to form what is a 4D model. There's a lot more to it than that, though. There's a lot more than just adding the design and the P6. So hopefully, if my tech holds out, I want to show a demonstration now. So this is the tool that we use. This is Synchro Pro. And what we would ordinarily get from a client is a whole series of design models, which we'll then bring in, and along with our P6 schedule, in this case here at the top, we start to append or assign the design model, which looks something like that, to those tasks. That would then give us a perfectly good construction sequence of how the building will go together. But in order for this to be fully utilized, a fully realized tool, and something which actually you will get full benefit from on your project, we have to actually add a lot more than that. So then as a company, we then go through and add things like the external ground surface, the surrounding buildings. So we do this in a couple of different ways. If you've had professional surveys done, topographical surveys, LiDAR surveys, whatever they may be, or point clouds, we can take those and import them directly into our modeling software, our 3D modeling software, and then we create this surface from that. And similar with the surrounding buildings, it seems fairly trivial to add all these things in, but actually getting a full appreciation of what your site looks like, we've found to be critical. It helps with the logistics of your site. It helps figuring out your laydown areas, and as you'll see a bit later on when I talk through the health and safety things, it actually helps your guys understand all the different hazards that are going on around the site. So we can add in the ground surface and things like fence lines and different constraints. We then decided that we were going to start to add in things like the temporary site barriering and things like substations, construction subs. So we're adding in things like the red and white barriers that you see commonly around construction sites where we've got access gates. We've marked on our laydown areas, our dry stores, and we've even gone into laying down things like the fire assembly points, where we've got cabins and welfare units and any other constraints on the site. So once we've got a picture of our site, we can then start to add in things like plant and equipment. So we always add in tower cranes as fixed assets. The tower cranes are all modeled accurately, so they'll be usually done off data sheets. So in this case, our contractors, Mamoit, they provided us with a series of 2D drawings showing the reaches of the cranes and the heights. We then modeled those up in 3D, and we added on the reach spheres, which you can faintly see in red, to show the extent of where each crane reached and the different ratings as well. Once we've added in all our plant and equipment, we then started to add in the temporary work side of things. So we can add in things like scaffolding, if we've got any temporary access around the edge of the building. And all of these items build up a bigger picture of what your site really looks like when you're in the construction period. So I just flick back now to my presentation. So once we've got our model all, and we've added in all of our temporary works, our logistics and everything else, and we've got all that modelled up, we then can start to think about how we're actually going to maximise what is within that 4D model. There are a few things that we've learned as we've gone through our own little journey on this, but the biggest thing that we've taken is that the difficulty or the disjoin between what's happening on site and what's happening with the planners back in the office. So we've developed a tool set, and along with our software provider, we've used tools which give us the ability to accurately and clearly report what's happening on site. We can directly report back to our 4D modelers in the office, site progress. We can put in RFIs, TQs, and we can also give our site operatives access to key documentation, all on an iPad on site. So we use the iPads to go to send our guys on site and report. Having that remote access just allows us to check the site progress within the model straight off, so we can see our design model on an iPad. We can see our program attached to that, and it also works the other way, where our office-based teams can then have a fully up-to-date view of what's actually happening on the construction site as well. The idea being that we increase the transparency between the two sites. The next thing that we did to sort of maximize what was happening in our 4D space was to start to incorporate health and safety items. With the clients that we work with reputationally and everything else, you know, a major health and safety incident on site can go a long way to damaging those reputations. So they take it very seriously. We started to add in things like hazard symbols, confined space symbols, things as simple as that, to the tasks in the program, so they appeared visually in the model. What that did was straight away, it was allow us to brief up the teams on site, and they were immediately aware of the issues they were facing, the areas they were walking into, the dangers that were present while they were working in a certain space or a certain zone. We then started to add things like fire assembly points and escape routes, and we started to map those onto the 4D model. What that gave us is as we all know, sites change very quickly, particularly when we're casting concrete, building walls and whatever else. The escape routes change almost weekly. And by constantly updating those fire escape routes and ensuring that everybody was aware of the videos, getting those videos up on screens on site so they were visible, and briefing the teams every week on the changing fire escapes, we found that there was a greater understanding than simply pointing to things on a drawing or having, you know, a series of signs which often end up washed out on site. So there was a greater understanding of how the guys are going to escape off site, and it's even changed the philosophy on fire escape routes on one particular site that we were on. It totally changed the way that they thought about fire escapes and things like that. The next thing that we started to use our 4D models for was in risk workshops. So again, they're a big thing in the industry that we work in, or in the industry that we primarily work in, and using our models to run the risk management workshops. It was bringing two parts of our business personally, so our risk element and our 4D side of the business, closer together than in traditional methods. Traditionally, these would have been in just Excel sheets, and you would have sat in a meeting and kind of talked over the risks with the programs in front of you. And by adding our 4D modeling to the mix, again, visually, people understand the risks straight away. So we've not got to get our heads around anymore what the risks actually look like. And we can give them that, therefore we can give them a more accurate risk score. So there's no ambiguity with this anymore. You can see straight off what an issue is or what an issue might be, whether it is a real risk, and then you can score it accurately. And then finally, we've been looking at now developing virtual method statements. So these again becoming quite popular with our clients. We use an advanced animation software, and we have a particular person within our company who does advanced animation. These advanced animations are far more detailed than what you would generally get from a construction sequence video, which is what we would ordinarily output out of Synchro. These show individual operations, so we can go into real detail and almost produce a movie, if you like, of what the overall sequence of a particular package of work might be. And if we need to, we can go into minute by minute breakdown of an activity. So again, these are being used as visual aids on site to teams instead of traditional written method statements, which we've often found are misconstrued or misinterpreted. It takes away all that ambiguity by showing them a video, and the understanding is pretty much instant. So in order to get the most out of your 4D models, you have to be able to effectively collaborate as a team. This isn't anything new. Anybody who's worked with BIM before knows that it almost forces you to be collaborative. However, as we found when we walk into some clients and some environments, there's still a very silo mentality within the planning world, and that's to be understood. It's maybe that 4D isn't understood, hence why we're doing the webinars, and maybe some of it is a bit of an old school mentality, dare I say. But the silo mentality doesn't work in truth, and it never worked with BIM, and the design teams are now moving away from that. So we feel so should the planning teams as well. What's key to everything that we do at Proicere is effectively we will chair and facilitate the workshops and force that collaboration for you. So we and our team are able to break down the communication barriers that have potentially existed previously, and that gives us a more transparent way of working, and that will ultimately allow us to produce a better output and reduce the risk during the construction or manufacturing stages of your project. It's also key to embrace an open-minded attitude to change. We use a whole different tool set to what a traditional planning team would use. These tools do actively integrate with the traditional tools, so we can still work with your P6s and your Microsoft projects and everything else, and that allows us to push information back into. However, we still have to admit that this is a different way of working, and there are lots of benefits to working this way. The attitudes of the traditional planning teams have to become more collaborative for this whole 4D thing to work, and for us to work together effectively. And finally, each project must, of course, with our help, understand its own temporary works requirements. One of the biggest issues that we found when we walked into or onto sites is that while we can suggest and use our knowledge to provide temporary works requirements, it's actually the designers, the construction teams, the clients that are best placed to tell us the constraints of their site and what those temporary works are going to look like, or how they feel they should work. From this information, we can then accurately develop a set of temporary works models, which will then be reflected in the 4D model. So overall, what we're really interested in is, let's be honest, what do you get from doing the process of 4D? That's what it all boils down to. Why should you look at this? Why should you take time to invest in it? And the truth is, the majority of these benefits will only be realized when you're on site. So while 4D can be introduced really early on into your project lifecycle, so we can start from concept, work right through to detailed design, construction, and even into commissioning. the only time you're going to really see the benefit of what 4D is when you get to the construction side of things. Projects which adopt 4D planning have on average saved between 10 and 15% on their programs versus using traditional planning methods. And that's purely down to us spotting scheduling errors, spotting clashes between work phases, clashes between trades, ironing out problems within contractor schedules and integration issues. And our own experience with this is that in order to show these benefits fully, we have to capture them. We've been capturing them in things like change logs and feeding these back into the client, because by the time we get to site, hopefully all those issues have gone away, and you don't have, or at least we reduce and minimize the amount of rework or issues that we run into on site. Some of the savings that we've typically made here at Proicere is they range from, a couple of days where we found something that was due to be delivered just in time, couldn't be delivered, to actually challenging a contractor on his whole philosophy of concrete pours, and challenging the way that his program was put together, based on the fact that we can visually see that there's errors within his program. Our 4D models are now used to help visualize line the sites on many of our projects. This is just making Monday morning briefings far easier to understand. The feedback that we've got from the guys on site, and these are guys, don't forget, who maybe don't understand Gantt charts, maybe don't understand the traditional planning methods, and are just being told what to do without really fully understanding the impact of what they're doing and what the impact that they're doing it has on other people. Using our models and our animations, like you can see in the window there, to describe what's going on in site on a Monday morning, has made their briefings far clearer. It also gives an opportunity to do things like 4, 8, 12-week look aheads, which we do again actively as part of our line of sight meetings. And that again is looking forward to ensure that we haven't got any surprises in coming up in the programs. In general, the models provide an increased understanding. That's the whole point of them, with the learning being almost instant. To watch a video rather than to read a Gantt chart, as I said before, many people don't understand Gantt charts. It makes everyone's life on site far easier. Combine that with things like the virtual method statements that we're creating based on the 4D model. We should, in theory, when we get to site, end up with a product that everybody fully understands before they even take a step out the door. Ultimately, the whole game of what we're trying to do here is to de-risk your construction or manufacturing program. So we use a little statement here all the time, and I put it on its own slide. What we give you at Proicere is a construction or manufacturing program which will work. And I think that is my very, very brief introduction to 4D done. I appreciate there's been a ton of information thrown at you there. And I just wondered, has anybody got any questions? You can either enter them in the chat or you can raise your hand. Stunned silence. So nobody any questions at all? In that case, if there is no questions, if anybody would like to get in touch with me afterwards to talk about anything that they may have seen today, you can either contact me on LinkedIn, you can contact our website and go through the inquiry section there, or you can reach out to me directly. I will drop my email onto the LinkedIn page when we're finished on this call. I want to say thank you to you all for attending. It's been really, really nice to have so many people here. Actually, I was a bit worried that nobody had turned up. I hope it's been useful. And as I've said, if there's anything in the future that you want to ask, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.